Hello everyone, my name is Oliver Bass, otherwise known as Bass in the Past, joined alongside by none other than Pyro J, and this is the esports.net recap show, a show recapping key moments and key events from around the world of esports in the last week. And Pyro, we're kicking off today talking about the updates to LCK, the format for the League of Legends professional circuit, and this is a rather interesting one, because we were just talking about how people thought that some changes might be coming in the next year, and we're hoping for some changes to the World Championship. Now, we're starting to see those changes actually be rolled out.
Yeah, so let's take a look at what the regular season is going to bring in terms of format. As you said, a little double elimination actions. What we're going to see, you got the double round robin system as part of the league play. So every team is going to get a chance to play every other team twice in that league play. The top 6 being able to make it to the playoffs. That's where you're going to see the double elimination part take place. You got the top 2 teams getting bye rounds as well. So lots of chances, Bass, for teams to maybe take a fall, but then later on, you got that lower bracket run, that big lower bracket story that people kind of love to cling on to as like the underdogs that made it back up. It presents some interesting storylines that could emerge for LCK.
It's fascinating as well, considering that, like we said, there is a little bit of a difference between all the different, the different regions that play within the whole LoL circuit. But the World Championship is what people were focusing on last time when complaining about a double elimination. Now here it seems like people are excited for that being introduced into the playoffs. In addition to the format changes here, there's also roster changes as well. This might be the one that has my eye the most here, is that LCK teams now have a limit of 20 players per team. So for a lot of these organizations that would normally have academy rosters, rather than having their academy rosters, they can just lump them onto the normal roster and not necessarily give them a starting role, but if they want to maybe, take one of those academy players, bump them up to the main roster, they can do that at any point throughout the season. And I think this is a really interesting change and something we haven't necessarily been able to see in almost any esport I can think about it. Yes, academy rosters have existed before, but the ability to put them on a roster and make a move midway through a season without any sort of punishment, that is fascinating to me. It feels very similar to AAA baseball in the MLB.
Yeah.
In the MLB, you can just call those players up at any time and see how they do on the roster. Well, now we got the AAA for the LCK. I am fascinated to see how this affects the LCK in the next year.
It's a huge motivational point as well for an academy player. I mean, imagine playing on that team, trying to make a case for yourself for that major league. I mean, that's a huge step up to some other esports, Bass, that we kind of see be more confined and more strict. I mean, I can think of some Rocket League teams where once you're put down to a sub role, but you're still locked into an org for that team, you may be sitting on that team unable to compete in anything professionally because you've been confined to that role, because there's only those 3 spots with 20 player spots between the main and the academy team of these league squads. You're getting everyone to support some action. And Bass, while it's motivational for the academy players, I imagine it's even motivational for those main starters to keep their role.
Yeah, especially considering how competitive a region LCK is. Both of the teams that participated in the LoL World Championship in the finals were from LCK. So this is interesting that they're doing this also to such a prominent region. I really think that this is such a huge step for LoL. I like the fact that they are being experimental with this, and I also like the fact that they are listening to their audience. Like a lot of people were saying, there needed to be changes to formats. It felt like the old formats were getting kind of stale. So what do? They switch everything up, and I think that these changes are going to be for the better. I'm really excited to see what actually ends up happening here with LoL and specifically the LCK. Maybe these type of changes will be affected in other places like maybe even LCS, but only time will tell. Right now, we've got our eyes on LCK and to see how it'll affect the rest of the LoL esports ecosystem, but that's not the only thing we got to talk about right now. We also have to talk about the launch of Warzone 2. You and I have been talking about this a lot. We've had a lot of anticipation towards not only the new Warzone, but the new Call of Duty launch, and after our Call of Duty launch that had, let's call it, mixed receptions depending on the gameplay itself, and then also, the let's call it bugginess that was said launch. Warzone 2 comes out and not necessarily dissimilar of a launch to what happened to the actual Call of Duty game in comparison.
Yeah, the comparisons are pretty similar when you look at the start, facing stabilization issues, just trying to get into the map and play. And granted, there's millions of players that are trying to catch that first Warzone 2.0 dub and show it off, flex it to everybody, right? It's going to be a hot scene, all new gadgets, the mechs, but eventually we saw that stabilization occur, and we got to see players enjoy some of the meaningful components of this new Warzone atmosphere. You have strongholds, which actually have meaningful AI that you can combat against and get certain rewards, that kind of is a contrast to some of the campaign and the arguments where the AI were unintelligent. These seem to be actually working properly and an engaging part of this war zone, where maybe during your first encounter when you die, that's not it. You get the gulag and you're done. You actually get to face against some AI components. But Bats, I think some of the biggest stories are coming from the main new mechs that people are looking at. We got 2v2 gulag and we got proximity chat.
Yeah, proximity chat has probably been the most interesting one to me in particular, just because it feels like it's very old school Call of Duty. For better or for worse, a lot of what Call of Duty really did get its name on was the ability to quite literally talk to your opponents no matter where you were. I've actually heard such stories of people who are just playing music just to try and distract their opponents. They are literally running through the map while they've got music blaring because they're just basically trying to mess with people. And it's awesome because as much as that may be annoying and certain people are going to be, you know, have some difficulty with that, you can turn the proximity chat off. But for those that are actually using the proximity chat feature, it feels like it's really brought a new revitalization to COD and specifically Warzone as well. And that's huge. Warzone is one of the biggest titles on the planet. There's no two ways about it. People have been enjoying Warzone for a very long time. The fact that it comes with a free price tag is absolutely massive for a lot of people who want to play it. And at this point, Pyro, I'm excited to see what the future holds here for Warzone. Like you said, while it wasn't necessarily the cleanest launch, there were a lot of bugs here and there. Now that they're starting to iron them out, it feels like the reception is only going up, and up. And again, it's the exact same thing that we saw with the actual Call of Duty launch when it came to their multiplayer and the campaign as well. So as it stands right now, I'm very excited to see what Warzone has in the future. It feels like after what was a very hesitant launch from a lot of people with a lot of questions of how well the client was going to run, in addition to the big changes that they were making, especially to custom lobbies and the spectator client, people had questions. And now a lot of those questions have been answered. Most of them, I would say, for the good, as long as we continue in this trend of most of the issues getting fixed in a quick basis.
Yeah, you know, we still have that Call of Duty map where there's cars on a bridge and everyone's blowing up at any point in time. So, you know, some things are just still kind of going to exist in Call of Duty. But you mentioned that the future is bright, and I think you're right. I come from a creative side where you're always kind of trying to create new stories, new mechanics, new kind of outcomes out of these games, and especially with some of the mechanics like the 2v2 gulag. You have people that are teaming up in that scenario, surviving together, and then meeting up again later in the battle, and they become friends and they join the same army, and then they end up sabotaging each other. It's great. It's fantastic. It's new. It's fresh. It's what Call of Duty needed, especially from the Warzone background. And Bass, we always talk about esports, and, you know, we'll keep an eye out for when maybe there's some competitions relating to Warzone as well.
We're going to have to find out. Like we said, there was a lot of questions with the spectator clients and the custom games. It seems like right now kill races are going to be the main play that people are going to try and work with. But again, you never really know. It seems like Call of Duty, they absolutely have their finger on the pulse right now and recognize the community are asking for specific features. Like you said, the ability to now join other people's groups midway through a game is absolutely hilarious to me. I think it's both a very cool thing because, like you said, you can make friends in the gulag, and it also makes it rather interesting in the ways that, what if you just betray everybody you're with? Who knows? Well, we'll find out in the following weeks. But that is all that we have got here today. We appreciate all you guys tuning in for the esports.net recap show. Once again, my name is Bass on the Pasture, alongside by none other than Pyro J. And stay tuned for even more content next week. Have a good one.